My father didn't just miss my wedding. He walked out in the middle of my vows to take a business call. 5 years later, when my company hit $580 million and his empire collapsed into bankruptcy, he texted me for the first time in years asking for help. So I bought his entire debt portfolio. And then I made him an offer he'd never forget. If you've ever been ignored by a parent who only saw your worth when you became successful, this story is going to be different. Stay close, because this revenge isn't about destruction. It's about taking back power. My name is Hannah Collins. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, became successful enough, my father would finally see me. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was especially wrong about that. My father, Richard Collins, built a real estate empire in Seattle with the same cold precision he applied to everything else, including parenting. He was the kind of man who wore expensive suits like armor, who spoke in quarterly projections instead of emotions, who measured worth in dollar signs. My mother, Evelyn, existed in his shadow like an apology wearing pearls. Whatever Richard decided was law. Whatever Richard wanted took priority. And if you questioned him, you were the problem. My older brother, Ethan, was the golden child. Football scholarships, Stanford business degree, everything my father wanted in an heir. They talked strategy over scotch, attended industry events together, finished each other's sentences about market trends. And then there was me, the unexpected daughter, the one who came along after they'd already decided their family was complete. I spent my entire childhood trying to earn a place at a table that only had 3 chairs. When I was 12, I built a detailed business plan for a youth hostel concept, sustainable, community-focused, with a working prototype website I'd taught myself to code. I left it on my father's mahogany desk with a note. "What do you think?" He never mentioned it. Years later, I found that business plan in a box in the garage. Coffee-stained, water-damaged, forgotten. But the wound that cut deepest came when I was 16. I had applied to a prestigious summer business program at Princeton, full scholarship, insanely competitive, the kind of opportunity that could change a life. I'd worked for months on the application. I'd gotten letters of recommendation. I'd aced the interview. I needed one thing, a parent's signature. My father refused to sign. "Hannah," he said, not looking up from his laptop, "you're not ready for that level of pressure. Focus on something more realistic." I begged. I explained how much it meant. I promised I'd work harder, do better, prove myself. He never signed the form. I didn't get into the program. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until years later, was that my father had connections on the selection board. One phone call could have guaranteed my acceptance. He never made that call, because Richard Collins didn't invest in things he didn't believe would succeed, and he didn't believe in me. So I learned to build my dreams quietly in the margins of a life that had no room for them. My wedding day started like a fairy tale. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains. My mother fixed my veil with trembling hands, tears already forming. Daniel, my fiancé, sent me terrible jokes via text to calm my nerves. The venue was perfect, a restored barn overlooking Puget Sound. Exactly what I dreamed of. And my father was there, dressed in his navy suit, present, even smiling in that tight, controlled way he did when cameras were around. For one fragile, foolish moment, I let myself believe this was the turning point, the day he'd finally choose me. The ceremony began. My father walked me down the aisle, his arms stiff beneath my hand. He was checking his watch. I noticed, but he was there. That had to mean something. We reached the altar. He kissed my cheek. Quick, formal, perfunctory. Then he sat in the front row next to my mother, and Daniel and I began our vows. I was halfway through mine, voice shaking with emotion, tears threatening to spill. When I heard it, a phone vibrating. The sound sliced through the music, through the moment, through everything. My father pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, and stood up. My mother grabbed his wrist. He pulled away. The entire room went silent as Richard Collins walked up the side aisle, phone pressed to his ear, and pushed through the exit door. It swung shut with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot. I froze mid-sentence, my bouquet trembling in my hands. Daniel whispered, urgently, "Hannah, look at me. Just me. I finish my vows." Somehow, but the words tasted like ashes in my mouth, and every person in that room knew what had just happened. My father chose business over me. Again, after the ceremony, I found my mother crying in the bathroom, mascara running down her carefully made-up face. He got a call about an acquisition. She whispered like that explained everything. A property in Vancouver. The seller gave him 1 hour to make a decision, or the deal would fall through. "So he left," I said, my voice flat and hollow. "He said you'd understand," my mother pleaded, gripping my hands. "He's building this empire for all of us. For you." "Stop," I said, pulling away. "Just stop." I checked my phone. One text from him, sent 20 minutes ago. "Emergency acquisition." I couldn't wait. "Congratulations on the marriage." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I wish I could have stayed." Not even, "I love you." Just a transaction notification, like I was a client he'd had to reschedule. That night, lying next to Daniel in our hotel room while he slept, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life begging for crumbs from a man who saw me as a footnote in his success story. Not congratulations, not acknowledgement, nothing. But then, 6 months before my company's valuation hit $580 million, something happened that changed everything. I was renovating a property in Bellingham when I found an old filing cabinet left by the previous owner. Inside were loan documents, zoning permits, contractor bids, all the paperwork from my first property purchase. And at the bottom, yellowed with age, was a letter. It was addressed to the Bellingham Planning Commission, dated 8 years earlier, right when I was trying to buy my first inn. The letter urged the commission to deny my zoning application, citing concerns about inexperienced ownership, financial instability, and lack of industry credibility. It was signed by a concerned local business owner. But I recognized the letterhead immediately. Collins Real Estate Holdings. My father's company. My father had sabotaged me, not passively, not through neglect or indifference. Actively, deliberately, he had tried to destroy my business before it even began. I sat on the floor of that empty building, the letter shaking in my hands, and something inside me turned to ice. The morning my company's $580 million valuation hit Bloomberg, CNBC, and every business publication in the country, my phone exploded. Investors, reporters, congratulations from acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. But the message that mattered arrived at 11:47 a.m. "Dad, family dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Important." I stared at that text for 10 minutes, my coffee going cold in my hand. Then another message appeared. From Ethan. "Ethan, don't go. He wants money. He's desperate." I blinked. Ethan and I hadn't had a real conversation in 3 years. Me. "Why are you telling me this?" Ethan. "Because I'm tired of watching him destroy people. And because you deserve to know he's broke, Hannah. Completely broke. The business is about to collapse." My heart started pounding. Me. "How bad?" Ethan. $47 million in debt. Foreclosures starting next month. Contractors suing. Lenders panicking. He thinks you'll bail him out because you're family. I called my CFO, Lena Martinez, immediately. Find out everything about Richard Collins' debt portfolio, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Every loan, every creditor, every foreclosure notice. I want it all on my desk in 2 hours. Hannah, Lena said carefully, that's your father. I know exactly who he is, I said. By 4 p.m., Lena walked into my office carrying a thick folder that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. It's worse than I expected, she said quietly. He's leveraged everything, properties, equipment, even his personal assets. The lenders are desperate to offload the debt. They're willing to sell the entire portfolio at 30 cents on the dollar. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Buy it, I said. All of it. Lena hesitated. Hannah, are you sure? Buy it, I repeated. By 6:30 p.m., I owned every dollar of my father's debt. By 6:45 p.m., I owned his empire. And at 7 p.m., I walked into that family dinner with a briefcase full of contracts and a heart that had finally stopped breaking. The private dining room at his country club was too elegant for what was about to happen. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a bottle of wine he definitely couldn't afford anymore. My father sat at the head of the table like a king whose kingdom was burning but who refused to acknowledge the smoke. My mother twisted her napkin nervously. Ethan sat stiffly, not making eye contact with anyone. Uncle Mark, my father's business partner, looked like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Hannah, my father said without standing. Sit. I remained standing. I know why I'm here, I said calmly. My father leaned back, attempting that old authoritative posture. Good. Then, let's skip the pleasantries. Your company is doing exceptionally well. Congratulations. Your family, however, is facing a temporary challenge. We need a bridge loan. $15 million should stabilize things until... No, I said simply. My mother gasped. Hannah, please. Let me be very clear, I interrupted, opening my briefcase. I'm not loaning you anything, because I don't need to. I pulled out the contracts and slid them across the table. As of 3 hours ago, I own your entire debt portfolio. Every loan, every mortgage, every property, all $47 million worth. My father went completely white. Uncle Mark grabbed the papers with shaking hands. Richard, she's telling the truth. My mother covered her mouth with both hands. Ethan closed his eyes. My father stood slowly, fury radiating from him like heat from a furnace. You bought my debt. His voice was barely controlled. I didn't just buy it. I said, my voice steady as steel. I now control everything you spent 40 years building. You ungrateful, he started. Don't. The room fell completely silent. He sabotaged my career. He ignored me my entire life. He never believed in me. And the only reason I'm sitting here right now is because I'm finally worth something to him. I looked directly at my father, meeting his eyes without flinching. You taught me that family only matters when it's useful. Congratulations, Dad. You were an excellent teacher. I closed the briefcase and turned toward the door. Behind me, my father's voice cracked, not with sorrow, but with rage. If you walk out that door, you're dead to me. I stopped, turned back, and smiled. No, Dad, I've been dead to you my whole life. You just didn't notice until now. Then I walked out of that dining room, out of that country club, and into the cool Seattle night. Behind me, I could hear my mother wailing, Uncle Mark's shocked murmurs, my father's furious shouting. None of it touched me. For the first time in my life, their chaos wasn't mine to carry. 3 weeks later, I stood on the stage at the Pacific Northwest Hospitality Summit in front of 800 industry leaders. My father had been a keynote speaker at this event for 20 consecutive years. This year, he wasn't invited. I'd been asked to give the opening keynote, building success on your own terms. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew our history. I stood at that podium, looked out at the sea of faces, and told my story, not with bitterness, not with anger, with honesty. I built my company. I said, my voice steady and clear, because someone I loved told me I wasn't capable. I spent years trying to prove him wrong. But the truth is, I was never building for him. I was building for the version of myself that deserved better. The room was completely silent. To anyone out there who's been told they're not enough, by a parent, by a partner, by a mentor, I want you to know something. Their doubt is not your truth. Their limitations are not your ceiling. And their failure to see your worth has nothing to do with your value. The applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. After my speech, I was surrounded by investors, journalists, fellow entrepreneurs, all wanting to talk, to connect, to congratulate. And in the very back of the room, barely visible behind a pillar, I saw him, my father. He'd come anyway. Our eyes met across the crowd. He looked smaller somehow, older. The unshakable confidence that used to define him was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. For the first time in my life, looking at Richard Collins, I felt nothing, not anger, not satisfied, not even pity, just nothing. He held my gaze for 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked out. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. 6 months later, I was in my office reviewing applications for a general manager position at our newest property when Lena walked in, her expression uncomfortable. "Hannah, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but..." She handed me a business card. Richard Collins, hospitality consultant. My stomach dropped. "Send him in," I said quietly. My father walked into my office like a man who'd aged a decade in 6 months. His suit was still expensive, but it hung on him differently. The arrogance that used to fill every room he entered was gone. "Hannah," he said, his voice rough. I didn't stand. "What do you want?" He sat down slowly, like his bones hurt. "I came to ask if there's a position available at one of your properties." I stared at him, genuinely shocked. "You want a job?" "I have 40 years of experience in this industry," he said. "I know hospitality better than almost anyone. I could be valuable to your..." "Stop," I said. He stopped mid-sentence. "You're here because you're desperate," I said, "not because you believe in me, not because you're proud of what I built. You're here because you have no other options." He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. "Do you know what I would have given?" I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts to control it. "To hear you say you were proud of me? Just once." His jaw worked. "I am proud." "Now you are," I said. "Now that I'm worth something." Silence filled my office like a physical presence. Then I did something that surprised both of us. I pulled out an employee application form. "If you want to work here," I said slowly, "you'll start at the bottom. Assistant manager, $55,000 a year. You'll report to managers half your age. You'll follow my company policies. You'll treat every employee with respect. And if you ever undermine me or my staff, you're gone. No warnings, no second chances." He stared at the paper like it was a foreign object. "Those are my terms," I said. "Take them or leave them." He picked up the pen. His hand shook as he signed his name. "One more thing," I said. He looked up. "Every Friday, I want a written report. Not about your work performance. About what you learned that week. About humility. About respect. About showing up. About all the things you never taught me." His eyes filled with something, not quite tears, but close. "And if after 1 year You prove that you understand what you did wrong, really understand, then maybe we can talk about being family again. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. But until then, I said, standing and extending my hand, you work for me, you report to me, and you earn every inch of respect you think you deserve. He stood and shook my hand. Welcome to Collins Hospitality Group, Mr. Collins. For the first time in my life, I was the one with all the power, and I chose not to destroy him. I chose something harder. I chose to give him the opportunity to become the father I'd always needed. Whether he would or not, that was up to him. It's been 12 months since my father started working at my company. He shows up on time, every day, does his job without complaint, follow the rules. Every Friday, without fail, he submits his reflection report. In the beginning, they were surface level, corporate speak, the kind of thing you'd write to check a box. But lately, in the last few months, they've been different. I didn't realize how much I missed by not listening. I see now what I took for granted. I'm sorry for the years I can't get back. Last week, during our quarterly leadership meeting, one of our junior managers, a 24-year-old woman, presented an innovative sustainability initiative. My father raised his hand. I think, he said carefully, choosing each word with visible effort, we should listen to her proposal. She clearly understands this industry's future better than I do. The entire room went quiet. I caught his eye across the table. He nodded slightly. Progress. After the meeting, he stopped by my office. Hannah, he said, could we have dinner? Just the two of us. I considered it for a long moment. Not yet, I said, but maybe soon. He smiled, a sad, genuine smile I'd never seen before. I'll wait, he said, and for the first time in my life, I believed him. People ask me if I regret not destroying my father when I had the chance. The truth is, destroying him would have been the easy choice. Giving him the opportunity to change, to grow, to become someone worthy of being called my father. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. I don't know if he'll ever fully understand what he took from me, but I'm no longer waiting for his approval to feel whole. I built an empire. I set the terms. I chose mercy over vengeance. And whether he rises to meet those terms or not, that's his choice now, not mine. I've already won. All right, revenge with Mary Pham. Let's talk about what Hannah just did. Her father walked out of her wedding mid-ceremony, sabotaged her first business, ignored her for years, only reached out when she hit $580 million, and only because he was bankrupt and desperate. She bought his entire debt portfolio and could have destroyed him completely. Instead, she made him work for her at $55,000 a year, reporting to people half his age, writing weekly essays about humility. That's not weakness. That's the ultimate power move. She didn't just take his empire. She made him earn the right to be her father. Every single day. So here's my question. Did Hannah make the right choice giving him that opportunity? Or should she have cut him off completely? Drop your answer below. And if you love this story about a daughter who took back every ounce of power, smash that subscribe button. This is Revenge with Mary, where justice comes in many forms. Thanks for watching.